Welcome, book lovers, to a very special, uncut, unedited, and unadulterated edition of Storytime by myself, Timothy Bateson. I'm answering a challenge from Joseph Carrebus over on the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Readers Lounge. He actually posted this in the author support group and asked many of our authors as possible to get together and do a recording from a book that inspired them, taught them something, or means something to them personally. Now, because we can't choose our own work, I'm breaking with tradition a little bit with these episodes. I'm going with an author who's not an indie author, but someone who I've met personally on a number of occasions, who signed an edition of this particular book with a signature that doesn't exist in very many copies because it takes so long to produce. The book in question is Reaper Man by Terry Pratchett. The reason I enjoy this book so much, it's not only just a great read, but it's also a study in what might happen if death itself took a holiday. Now, when I say death itself, in this particular case, because it's Discworld, I mean death himself. Correct. Because death takes a vacation, it means that people stop dying. I mean, their bodies stop functioning, their souls try to continue without them, but death himself doesn't collect them. So what happens after that? I'm going to give you a little taste of what that might mean. And I'm going to pick up from this particular edition. I'm looking at page 30. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at page 27. My bad, I put the bookmark back in the wrong place. And like I said, these are unedited and unadulterated. So you're going to get all the little glitches that I normally edit out. Windle Poons peered into the darkness. Hello? Hello, anyone there? What ho? There was a distant forlorn soughing as of wind at the end of a tunnel. Come out, wherever you are, said Windle, his voice trembling with mad cheerfulness. Oh, don't worry, I'm quite looking forward to it, to tell the truth. He clapped his hands, spiritual hands, and rubbed them together with enforced enthusiasm. Get a move on. Some of us have got new lives to go to, he says. The darkness remained inert. There was no shape and no sound. It was void without form. The spirit of Windle Poons moved on the face of the darkness. It shook its head. Blow this for a lark, it muttered. This isn't right at all. It hung around for a while, and then, because there didn't seem anything else for it, headed for the only home it had ever known. It was a home he'd occupied for 130 years. It wasn't expecting him back and put up a lot of resistance. You either had to be very determined or very powerful to overcome that sort of thing. But Windle Poons had been a wizard for more than a century. Besides, it was like breaking into your own house, the old familiar property that you'd lived in for years. You knew where the metaphorical window was that didn't shut properly. In short, Windle Poons went back to Windle Poons. Wizards don't believe in gods in the same way that most people don't find it necessary to believe in, say, tables. They know they're there. They know they're there for a purpose. They probably agree that they have a place in a well-organized universe, but they don't see the point in believing, of going around saying, "Oh, great table, without whom we are naught." Anyway, either the gods are there, whether you believe or not, or exist only as a function of the belief. So, either way, you might as well ignore the whole business, and as it were, eat off your knees. Nevertheless, there is a small chapel off the university Great Hall. Because while the wizards stand right behind the philosophy as outlined above, you don't become a successful wizard by getting up God's noses, even if those noses only exist in an ethereal or metaphorical sense. Because, while wizards don't believe in gods, they know for a fact that gods believe in gods. And in this chapel lay the body of Windle Poons. The university had instituted 24 hours laying in state ever since the embarrassing affair 30 years previously with the late Priscil, merry prankster Tita. The body of Windle Poons opened its eyes. 2 coins jingled to the stone floor. The hands crossed over the chest, unclenched. Windle raised his head. Some idiot had stuck a lily on his stomach. His eyes swiveled sideways. There was a candle on either side of his head. He raised his head some more. There were 2 more candles down there too. Thank goodness for old Tita, he thought. Otherwise I'd be looking at the underside of a rather cheap pine lid. Funny thing, he thought. I'm thinking clearly. Wow. Windle lay back, feeling his spirit refilling his body like gleaming molten metal running through a mould. White-hot thoughts seared across the darkness of his brain, fired sluggish neurons into action. It was never like this when I was alive. But I'm not dead. Not alive and not dead. Sort of non-alive. Or undead. Oh dear. He swung himself upright. Muscles that hadn't worked properly for 70 or 80 years jerked into overdrive. For the first time in his entire life, he corrected himself. Better make that period of existence. Windle Poons' body was entirely under Windle Poons' control. And Windle Poons, this spirit, wasn't about to take any lip from a bunch of muscles. Now the body stood up. The knee joints resisted for a while, but they were no more able to withstand the onslaught of willpower than a sick mosquito can withstand a blowtorch. The door to the chapel was locked. However, Windle found that the merest pressure was enough to pull the lock out of the woodwork and leave fingerprints in the metal of the door handle. Oh goodness, he said. He piloted himself out into the corridor. The distant clatter of cutlery and the buzz of voices suggested that one of the university's 4 daily meals was in progress. He wondered whether you were allowed to eat when you were dead. Probably not, he thought. And could he eat anyway? It wasn't that he wasn't hungry. It was just that, well, he knew how to think, and walking and moving were just a matter of twitching some fairly obvious nerves. But how exactly did your stomach work? That's the start of the adventure for Windle Poons, realistically. And I'm not going to read any more because I'd like you to explore the book for yourself and try and see if you can enjoy it with the same care that I do, because the satire, the humour, and the outlook that Terry has on life was amazing. And it shows very much in this particular book. And I'm going to just say, if you have not tried Terry Pratchett, you like comedy and you like fantasy combined, read Discworld. It's some of the best work out there by a fantasy author who knows the world, who knows people, and addresses things from a point of view that might not always be orthodox. So this has been Timothy Bateson reading from Reaper Man by Terry Pratchett. And I'm going to put in the show notes some links to this book and where you might subscribe to find out more about my other storytime readings. But anyway, more importantly than that, during these difficult times, stay safe, stay well, and do what you need to do to remain that way.